The parliamentary committees on defence are pressing the government to inject increased financial resources into the Department of Defence. The chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, that's Malusi Gigaba, has warned that persistent underfunding threatens not only the country's ability to defend its borders, but also its international credibility and economic growth potential. Now, the death of 14 soldiers in the DRC earlier this year brought the resourcing and funding of the Defence Force into sharp focus. And for more on this, let's chat to the chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, Malusi Gigaba. Chair, great to have you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers at home.
Let's get straight into it. How dire is the financial situation when it comes to the SANDF?
The situation is quite serious. It's so serious that last year, the President Ramaphosa, took the decision to establish an interministerial committee that would involve the Defence Force to look at the funding requirements for the National Defence Force. The Defence Force has not been able to recruit sufficient numbers of younger soldiers. The reserve forces are also undercapacitated. The various defense capabilities of the National Defense Force, some are grounded, others are not operating very well. And that has a massive impact on the morale of our soldiers, on the capabilities of the Defense Force to undertake its domestic and most particularly international obligations. We see that recently the demands on the National Defence Force have extended to some domestic priorities, such as fighting the Zamazamas, the COVID-19 in 2020. So the situation is quite serious, and it requires that we respond with the utmost urgency if the South African National Defence Force should sustainably be a force to reckon with on the African continent.
Yeah, I mean, when we break it down and we look at the state of the SANDF currently, I mean, just, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but just a very quick search, we get to see the incredibly difficult situation that's there. Only a handful of Gripen fighter jets are serviceable. Oryx and Roy Falk helicopters are aging. They're not operational. No long-range airlift capability to move troops. The Navy, only 1 or 2 vessels are seaworthy. The submarine fleet is effectively grounded. Coastal and maritime surveillance is nearly non-existent. Vehicles for the army are outdated and prone to failure. I mean, these are just some of the issues that, I mean, if South Africa had to protect itself, I don't think we would stand a chance in protecting this country with the way things are now with the SANDF.
Let's start by saying you're absolutely correct, and all of those issues that you are raising are real. But let's be clear: the South African National Defence Force, even with the sustained underfunding, remains one of the most funded national defense forces on the African continent. It is capable of defending our national sovereignty. It's capable of defending our borders, but we've got to arrest the sustained underfunding if we must ensure that going forward, it continues to maintain its prestige on the continent and internationally. Because a country that cannot defend itself and that doesn't have a national defense force that can be trusted becomes easy prey for all sorts of criminal agencies and including rebel activities. So we've got to arrest this situation and raise our defense funding to at least, to over 1%, over 1.5% as the president had, over 1.5% of GDP as the president had committed, because the funding of the National Defence Force has an impact on research and innovation, it has an impact on aggregate output, as well as it has an impact on positive externalities, and it impacts on the manufacturing capabilities in the country, because the Defence Force is one of the biggest spenders on research and innovation as well as on manufacturing. And you can see in many countries, given the changes in the geopolitical environment, they are raising their defense budgets to be able to cater for the unforeseen environment towards which we are currently headed.
Yeah, you know, one of the big issues certainly is the fact that many people talk to the lack of political will to try and sort the situation out, and that this is not the first time that this has been complained about. In fact, if we go back over many years, this has been a major complaint that the SANDF has not been adequately funded, and that infrastructure is falling apart, and that the weapons, the downfall of Denel, there's many issues that have come into play here. And how are we going to guarantee that, you know, now is the time? Because as the Deputy Minister, Bantu Holomisa, was saying, enough of sloganism and enough of talking. We need the money. We need to turn this around. Do you think this could possibly be the moment?
This is the moment. I don't think there's been lack of political will to fund the Defence Force. The problem has been in trying to balance the budget priorities. The Defence Force has often found itself to be easy prey for budget cuts and for diversion of some of its funds to fund other priorities. Now is the time for us to ensure that we find the resources, and that's why the committee is of the view that we shouldn't look within the confines of the current fiscal framework and budget constraints if we want to have a very good and capable national defense force. We need to find resources, and we believe that the money to fund our national defense force can be found from various opportunities, like the existing and unused land assets that exist within the National Defence Force and other areas. Whilst we can rely on partnerships with the private sector, the military establishment in the country, we need to ensure that the National Defence Force is funded on its own and is able to undertake the programs that it has to undertake, because in addition to the equipment, this has had an impact on training programs. We've seen the hours at sea, the hours on air declining because the budget is simply not there. So now is the time. If we don't act now, we are going to face serious problems in the next few years. And the country's national security and stability will be seriously undermined.
Well, it certainly will, and the bottom line is that you know, when we look at our cyber and electronic warfare capabilities, they're virtually non-existent, and this is the way that the world is actually going, and we can see that when it comes to the management of our borders. This is, you know, one of the key indications where we can see that our surveillance is in a very bad state. However, as we sit and talk about the serious cash crunches in the Defence Force, the Department of Defence is the biggest culprit of unauthorized expenditure. This must be a major concern for the committee as well.
It is a major concern for us because a lot of money has been wasted on unauthorized and irregular expenditure on projects such as one military hospital, where we've spent over R1 billion, but the construction of the first floor of one military hospital has remained stagnant. It's not moved forward since so many years ago, and yet so much money has been spent on that, and that's why we have convened a meeting mid-May with the SIU to look at the forensic audit that was conducted on one military hospital and to begin to interrogate a number of other areas where we need to find out where did the money go to, how was it spent, and why action has not been taken. If you look at the last 5 financial years, the Auditor General has been raising very serious issues about the SANDF and how money is spent, and we are going to look at that. But the Portfolio Committee of the National Assembly is also paying great attention to these issues. So we hope that between the two of us, we will be able to assist in not only unearthing the problems, but also in drawing the attention of the National Defence Force towards what needs to be done. And one of the things that must be done is the permanent appointment of the Secretary of Defence.
I mean, that's, if we put a price to one military hospital, we're talking R1 billion has been spent to date, and it's still not workable. And this is a major problem. Another major problem, let's talk to Denel. Because, I mean, when we look at Denel, once a pride of a nation, this parastatal has basically managed to be crippled. I mean, and this goes back to, you know, many years. I mean, we can go back to the days of state capture where we look at what happened to Denel. And billions have been spent there without a single delivery of, let's take, for example, vehicles that were meant to be delivered to the army. They're not fulfilling their mandate. Salaries are not being paid. It's basically in a state of collapse. Where are we at when it comes to Denel?
So a new leadership has been appointed, a new board, new CEO. They are in operation. They are doing their best, and we hope that they will succeed to turn the company around so that they are able to deliver on the projects. Project Hoof Easter, which was supposed to have been delivered to the National Defence Force, and money has been paid for that project, but those capabilities have not been delivered. The Denel is in a state of dilapidation as it is, so it needs to be turned around. We've lost a lot of technical engineering capabilities, some of whom have gone abroad, and there are instances where allegations are said that we have also lost some IPs to other countries. Some of the projects that were on the order book of Denel have had to be stalled or cancelled. So we've got to pay urgent attention to the turning around of Denel. But one of the problems from our point of view is the misalignment between Denel and Armscor. The fact that these two entities of the state are not able to agree on some of the projects which they need to undertake. The project Hoof Easter has been ordered and paid for, and then Armscor says, no, stop the project, bring it to an end. Denel says we are not done. The National Defence Force still needs the Hoof Easter. And so we need to ensure that the shareholder plays their part in bringing about alignment between the needs of the National Defence Force and the actions of the entities that must procure, which is Armscor, and the one that must deliver, manufacture the products that have been ordered. And that is one of the biggest issues, because at the end of the day, Denel's sustainability depends on the order book that comes from the SANDF. The declining budget of the SANDF impacts on the ability of Denel, because when you go abroad and you say you are marketing Denel's products, one of the first questions, including the South African military private sector institutions, and if you market the products which they manufacture, one of the first questions that countries abroad ask, does your own National Defence Force use these products? Does it have faith in them? And if it does not, then it becomes difficult to market and to even sell those products. So the impact of the National Defence Force and the two SOEs that are supporting it, that are undergirding it, is so severe that it affects also the private sector, it affects the GDP of the country, and various other positive externalities such as research, innovation, and manufacturing. And so we need to fix Denel. We need to ensure that Armscor itself is in a good state. and that the two entities are aligned with the needs, not just with one another, but they are aligned with the needs of the National Defence Force.
Before I let you go, Chair, and please very, very quickly, we in the interest of time, the issue around the DRC and the withdrawal of the troops. I mean, we know that there's this process that is underway, but it doesn't seem that it has been completed. We've already lost many lives of members of the SANDF. Where are we at? Has there been an update into the status of these troops?
When we requested an urgent meeting with the Minister and the Chief of the SANDF to brief us on the recent decision of the SADC heads of state and government, we were informed that the discussions were still ongoing and that they are not yet able to provide us with a detailed logistical plan of how our soldiers and prime mission equipment will be retrieved from the DRC, particularly given the volatile and tense situation on the ground. But at the beginning of May, we are going to have that briefing, and we hope that we will be told in good detail so that both the committee as well as the country understand the steps that are going to be taken to bring back safely our soldiers that are on the ground there, as well as our prime mission equipment. But we are quite hopeful that those processes have started.
All right. We leave it there. The chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, Malusi Gigaba, talking to us about a myriad of issues that are affecting the SANDF, whether we talk budget cuts, Denel, Armscor, skills, equipment, maintenance, you name it, including what's still happening with the troops in the DRC. So thank you again, Chairperson, for your time.